Welcome, everyone. Estenia Caputo here with Valence Fitness. This show was designed to bring light, stories of adversity, and to come up with ideas of how to move forward in a positive way. I have been so fortunate to be introduced to individuals across the nation. They've had some amazing stories to share. And you would think that they're the typical, okay, I'm going to reach out to a doctor, and I'm sure this doctor is going to talk about being physically fit and how important that is. But no, I have a doctor who comes on and says, as far as your show, this Valence Fitness, being fit emotionally and mentally and physically and socially, intimately and all that, I don't want to talk about being fit and being healthy on the physical aspect. I want to talk about how I was a teenage mom who in high school had to stay focused so I could get myself all the way through medical school and run a practice. So these are the type of individuals that I have on this show, and I love hearing these stories. So this week, I am so happy to have my next guest. She has worked in the women's health industry for the last 20 years as a certified personal trainer. She is also a nutritional advisor. You probably have seen her in many, various ways. She has partnered with fitness publications. She has also been featured in several online DVDs. And you're always like that. She's always that type of person that I go, ooh, I wish I was her. Look at that. Look at amazing. Well, she's done many of those. She has been on numerous fitness platforms. She has shared herself that way with the world for 20 years. But there's something else that she is willing to share. She is an author. She has written a book about this. And, we started talking and I asked her, what is your idea of your story? And what I got back from her, well, she got right to the point. What she said is, we all have the power to change the story we are telling ourselves, whether it is after a traumatic event, maybe there's been physical trauma or disease diagnosis or even divorce. She is willing to look at her story she's going to share with us and what she told herself and how she turned herself from a victim to a victor. Her mission is to share the tools that she has used to step out of that victimhood and move into what she calls her power and purpose. So please welcome to the show this lovely lady who has amazing spirit, Victoria Griffith. Hi, Victoria.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm like blown away by everything, how you put everything that I wrote together. You articulate it so well. So thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome.
I'm used to writing everything. So I'm good writing. So speaking, I'm, especially about this subject matter is still, even though I published my book 2 years ago, this is fairly new for me to actually be sharing what I wrote about. So thank you for allowing me to come on and start this next phase of my journey.
Yes, we're excited to hear. So, basically, I know that you shared with me that I love the way you put it. You had said that what you had been through, what the story that you're going to share is not one of the traditional abuse or sexual assault that you see, on the evening news or, on your social media feed. And that it's something, though, that a lot is more common and that people have gone through, and the wounds, the scars are less visible. And I really want to hear what this is, because I bet you there are a lot of people who can relate once you say it.
So, wow, you just made this so much easier for me to even be able to talk about it, because that's my main message. I think it's I've been watching even since I wrote my book, watching people talk on social media, especially now during all of the pandemic, about traumatic events that maybe they were in a car accident or they've gone through some sort of injury or illness, that they've had to, come back from. And people are so supportive and rush in and yay, yay, rah, rah, rah. But the one aspect of trauma that I don't see anybody talking about, male or female, is in owning it and stepping into the truth is sexual assault and actually saying the word rape. It's very taboo in our society. And I do feel that's the reason I decided to write my book, because the shame that women and men hold on to because they can't share their story with anybody. They feel like they can't. That's why this goes kind of unnoticed and it stays really pushed down, and the wounds get deeper and deeper and deeper. And then you get to 46 years old, like I am. I mean, I started my healing journey, my true healing journey, about 10 years ago. The physical aspect of it, 20 years ago. I knew that there was something I needed to heal, but these wounds just stay so buried that then, it will finally surface at some point in your life. And that's where I am a huge believer in going in, getting that wound, not living in the past. And I talk about my 5 V's and not staying in victimhood, but going in and getting that wound and in addressing it, healing it, and continually healing it so that it doesn't turn into another wound and another wound. And I have to remember, I know it was probably reason for me to stop talking about why I wrote my book and maybe just get into my story. But it is needed that I get my story out so that we don't, as you touched on earlier, we don't stay in the narrative, the original narrative of the wound that happens to us, whatever that is. But when it comes to sexual assault and rape in particular, it's just become so taboo to talk about it. So it does cause a lot of more internal things that go on in the inside, that we have to address. Just with anything, you've got to do the inner work in order to get the outer to be balanced.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to get right to it. I need to hear, I know something started from when you were young.
So I will say I started when I remember this before we got cut off, 20 years ago is when I started my healing journey. And I kind of mentioned it earlier that that's when I delved into being a personal trainer. I was so focused on the physical that I thought, okay, to fix my chronic digestive issues, my weight fluctuations, and then my female cervical issues that I was dealing with, I went the physical route. And that's why today I'm like, okay, guys, we have to look at that inner too, because I was working so much on the physical, it wasn't healing these things. So then I found metabolic typing, which is my nutritional certification and health coaching that I do. That was what actually was my, the time where I finally just kind of held up the mirror kind of on my inside saying, I've got to do something on the inside because the physical stuff isn't working. And this nutritional program does look at the emotional, behavioral, psychological. So that's when, I guess about 15 years ago, I realized I had to go back, and I knew what my original wound was. And I wrote about it in my book because I wasn't super, super young. I was 19 years old. And I went off to college.
That's still young though. They say your mind doesn't even fully develop until you're about 23, 24 years of age. So there's still a lot of uncertainty at that age.
True. I guess because I've done so much, I work with a hypnotherapist. By the way, I've had two. Even one of my spiritual directors I talk about in my book, what is a certified hypnotherapist, and they work with people to go back and get like really young wounds that they, that it's in their it's laying dormant in their nervous system, but they're not aware of really the event. I knew what that event was, and I had just been running from it. In fact, so much so that when I found my first spiritual director that got me on this healing path, she said, why are you running? What are you running from? Particularly with men. She picked it all up. But I went back and found that original wound, and that's where kind of my story starts. because I went off to Texas Christian University. Christian, I had to put that in there. I always make sure that, I guess, where to kind of set the stage of where I went to school, it was all about a very, I guess, safe, a safe kind of college to go to,
So you felt in a safe environment.
Yes. And growing up, I was in a very safe environment, very church and religious oriented. I hung out with all like they call it. I don't think they call it that now. And I was a little naive, I would say, probably more naive than, how our teenagers are now. It's very opposite now, but I went off to TCU at 19, never had any alcohol, didn't drink, or went on. Actually, I started when I was 17. And then by 19, still hadn't really had a sip of alcohol or done anything with boys, and ended up going to a party with a sorority sister of mine, and had my first drink. And a guy, one of the fraternity boys, gave it to me, and didn't know what it was, but it was, I guess, hindsight, found out it was Goldschlager, or was told it was Goldschlager. So that was my first drink. And then followed by Trash Can Punch, which was apparently my, what I had after that. And after that, it was pretty much a blur, but still I was aware of what was going on, because that was the first time I'd ever had alcohol. And I ended up off campus somewhere, and I just, I'm going to spare the details, but basically it was painful. It was just rough. And I remember the song that was on, and I remember saying no several times. And then I just surrendered and just let go. I had a lot of shame in the fact that I responded that way in hindsight, because you stop fighting. And that's what my healing work did with my first spiritual director. She helped me realize, I wrote a whole chapter on fight, flight, and freeze, that's what the sympathetic versus parasympathetic. The sympathetic nervous system has reactions, when you go into a traumatic state. I'm sure you know this, your prefrontal cortex, I feel, or I say in my book, just goes offline. And you can't make those rational decisions. And either people, they freeze, they flee, or they fight. And my response was to freeze. And that was my pattern for the next, 22 years, was freezing. And
was that a fear to do anything or was it a survival mode?
For sympathetic nervous system, thank you so much, because I'm nervous.
Okay, don't be nervous about me.
Well, no. I mean, this is the first time I've actually shared my story other than my book. So it's and it's good for me. It's good for me to talk this through and slow down. But the sympathetic nervous system, it is more of a protection mode. So again, everybody reacts, now that I've done a lot of work with women that have experienced trauma, and men, when it deals with sexual assault and rape, that we all have a different way of coping with it. And it is it's our survival instinct. However, some people fight back, and they, they punch and they kick and scream. Others get very violent with their words and angry. And that would be more, that's the fight. Some would, run away and get out of the situation. But when you're with somebody that which was really not my first incident, but later on, there were people that I trusted that violated me. That's even harder to understand the freezing, because you can't even process what's going on in those situations. So more women do freeze when they actually know the person that, the perpetrator or the predator, or whatever you want to call that person that's taking advantage of you. But the the work that I did with healing, there are a lot of women that say this, what gave me peace was the fact that these women were saying, a lot of women say that they feel like they're floating above their body. And that's exactly what I felt during that moment. When I was 19, I have a vision of what was happening and how it was happening. And then that is a pattern that was repeating. Also crying and freezing and crying. And that still is something that I work on today. Just really having to get in touch with my body, get back into my body. That's what trauma work really helps you do. But the actual wound, I think, beyond, me losing my virginity this way and all of that, even the idea that I was saving myself for marriage, the devastation came in after a few days later when I found out that I was a vet. So this fraternity boy, had bet his fraternity brothers that he could, take me off. They called it at TCU the V team. And he accomplished that. I think I heard that he got $100. So yeah, I was worth $100 back then. That was devastating. So when you talked about rewriting the story, is if I had not, I didn't tell a soul what happened. I kept it to myself. I just buried it. I had already started that damaged goods syndrome. I wanted to get married. I wanted to, that's why I went to TCU to get my MRS degree. I mean, nobody could ever believe that now, knowing how I am, but that was me. I mean, I was just this naive living in a fairy tale. And I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want this to affect how other people saw me. I didn't want to be called a slut, especially new to campus and, all of that. And so I just kept it in. And if I had told myself, my message for other women is, if I had told myself a different story, or somebody was there in my life, and again, I don't blame anyone else. I didn't tell anybody, so they can't know. But if I had felt like I could open up to one other person that gave me comfort that this is going to be okay, this is not going to change the course of your life, and, it would have altered the path. I know, 100% that I would have changed course. And that's why I want to help people I kept recreating the pattern for 22 years with men, because I didn't feel like I was enough after that I was damaged. So I kept attracting men that were damaged. They were just as damaged as I was. That's how I've been able to forgive them, because even, in order to become healthy and healed, I had to love myself. And then the individuals would have come in that matched my energy. And that's the other thing that I do want to say. I had several women, now that it's been 2 years since I published my book, I've had several women read my book. And I always ask, so what's your takeaway if they haven't written a review? And they're like, Vicki, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, I feel after reading your book that you were blaming yourself for what happened. And I'm like, that's an interesting perspective. Why are you saying that? And both of them said basically the same thing, just a little bit different. But they were like, you didn't ask for it. You didn't cause that to happen to you. And I don't want anybody to take away from this interview or even my book that I felt like when I was 19 that I asked for it. That's not my message. By getting, having alcohol for the first time, because we all have alcohol. This was predetermined. Because I was a vet, so I didn't ask for that. I didn't know. I was completely unaware. It's what I want women to know is we do have ownership of the story we tell ourselves in victimhood. We have ownership to crawl out of that and get out of that and rise above it and change the story. Because if you stay in victimhood, you're just going to repeat the cycle like I did. Why I have a almost 350 page book is because it wasn't just one event. It was, I went to an abusive fiance right after that, then an alcoholic. I have each chapter laid out. then a narcissist, then a pastor of a church who I trusted.
So the common denominator was?
The common denominator was in every aspect. Well, these were damaged men. And I pray that I've forgiven them all, but I pray that they have healed themselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
So much easier to forgive when you understand the psychology behind why they were doing it. But the common denominator was the fact that if I had told myself that story back after, at 19 years old, that I am worthy of the most amazing man to come into my life. I don't have to date someone else that's damaged or look for somebody else to, that matches what I've been through, that I am whole, I am complete, and that I love myself, in truly believing it and getting back in my body and owning that you can change course. And we talk about energetically, you will attract the right, the right people that balance you and not fix you. Because there are plenty of men that were nice guys that kind of rushed in to help fix, but they've got some issues they've got to go through if they feel like they have to fix women that have gone through certain things. But I also feel that once you get into that cycle, we have to, what I talk about in my 5 V's, we have to change that feedback loop in our brain that keeps going over and over again. And that's neuroplasticity. And it's easier to do after one event or something traumatic. But once you let it go on, it's not impossible, but it has taken a lot of work and a lot of time in order to reprogram my brain and not get triggered in certain situations. And to me, that if I had started that work, way sooner, it would have been easier. So that's why
I have a question. I have a question for you because it's just burning in my brain.
Okay.
I was sitting here listening to you. Earlier, you talked at the very beginning about the fight or flight, that type of situation. And I completely agree with you about the whole fight and flight thing. I had a dinner party with a bunch of ladies and a candle fell over because the power went out and a candle fell over and I had tons of candles and you could see the reactions. One was just like, cool, and then another one went, screaming. And another one was me who did the freeze. I just froze. Okay. You never want to be alone with me in a place of fire because I will not save you. And the last person actually just took the glass, poured it out, was able to react just like that calmly. Now that's the type of person, she actually is a really good friend of mine, always by my side. But I'm bringing this up because it is so important to understand that everyone does react differently. Now, what I would like to know is, we've talked about, and I know you're going to go into your V's and all that, but something keeps gnawing at me. Do you feel that how you were raised, being raised in a Christian household, were things of that nature spoken about? Were you empowered to be a strong woman? Did your parents put you in martial arts, so that way you could kick some butt right before, it happened? What could you say to the audience as far as, doing something that's proactive as opposed to the healing after?
Oh, I love prevention. That's what my whole training business is about. Amen to what you just said. Wow, this could be a second book. You just gave me goosebumps.
But just put a little message in there about me.
But no, seriously, I will. You'll be in my forward. You can help me write my forward because I didn't do that for this one. I meant to, but wow, that's so powerful. And not follow up after the fact. The prevention part of it is crucial. As far as my upbringing is concerned, I mean, I have an identical twin. So we're similar but different. And I will say I have gone, my background's in dance. So I grew up dancing and I write about that in my book. I always put a lot of pressure on myself. I talk about, this is where my story applies to every woman out there, the need to be perfect. That doesn't help situations when you go into, something traumatic that happens to you physically, whatever that may be. But also the fact that I truly believe my sister didn't run around with the group or date. I dated a young man in high school that now is an assistant minister at a church here in Dallas. Not the pastor I was talking about. That is somebody that's off the radar. But that kind of set the tone. I did put that in my book. I don't say any names at all because it doesn't matter. I mean, but that dating someone that now is in the ministry and is living his life that way, he was very rigid as a boyfriend in the fact that we couldn't kiss, we couldn't lay on top of each other. There's something happened in my programming that it wasn't my parents, it wasn't like my immediate home. It was this group I ran around with that were so intolerant of people that drank. And if I could go back and do anything different, it would be moderation of. Now, I don't think that this is, we're on the other end of the spectrum now. There's no women, I don't know any young girls that want to save themselves, really. It's all about losing yourself and, showing body parts and all of that. I definitely don't like that extreme, because that to me is a whole nother book I could write about women, expressing themselves in a very sacred way. And that's not sacred. But I think introducing women to moderation as far as, what's truly balanced, like living a balanced life. And I wasn't in the regards of, I would say, the people that I was hanging around. And, it could have been worse. They could be all druggies and, whatever. I had no exposure to any of that because I was so enamored by this individual, and now he's preaching. So I get it. You can get caught up in certain, narratives that way. And saving myself for marriage was amazing. But yet, once this event happened, somebody else that maybe wasn't so set on, this is my body, I'm saving it for, my husband and all of that, maybe wouldn't, it would still be traumatic, I think, finding out that you were a vet, and not being able to do anything about it in my situation. But it truly has to do with, I think, again, the stories that we have going in our mind, and making sure people are there to kind of not check you, but, or you just feel safe opening to people. Because again, people couldn't have read my mind and what was going on with me. That's, I think. Did you
have a pretty open relationship with your parents? Were you able to talk about those type of things with them?
No, I wasn't really, no, that's not the relationship we have. And it's not, with my sister either. We all get along, and we all have, dysfunctional families that we're with, but that's not, I've always said this since I was in elementary school. I never felt like I truly fit in, and other people are like, Vicki, what are you talking about? You were so popular and all of that. And I know how I feel. And this goes back before I went to TCU. I always felt different, that there was something different about me, and not in a bad way, just like, and I still feel this way, and I actually love it, that I'm like, I don't fit in anywhere, but I fit in everywhere.
Yes.
And I don't care to have a lot of acquaintances. That's not my thing. I don't have a girl clique that I run around with. Never. And people actually worry about that. Like, they're like, kind of worried. My family, my mom has a huge girl group, and my sister has a huge girl group. I'm a loner, but yet I have a lot of acquaintances. So I think that isolation in almost a healthy way. It's not like I would isolate because I'm, down or whatever. It's just, that's how I was. So people just, and still am, people have learned now that's how she is, and they don't give me a hard time about it. But I think having friends, even if I had one really close friend to share in witness to what happened, because that's what a lot of women now, they do that with me. They need to get their story out. And if you haven't been through sexual assault, not many people understand that. They're like, put it away, put it in the past, don't talk about it. There's something about going through something physical, a physical abuse with sexual assault and rape in particular. You have to talk about it. You have to. And that's part of my 5 B's.
Yeah. And the thing is, and I'm just talking from something I know about that has happened recently. You and I are, I think I'm older than you are, but back in the day, it's that kind of thing was just fooling around, boys trying stuff. Oh, you're at a party. And I can't tell you how many parties that women, even a girlfriend of mine, was sexually assaulted and was in denial that it even happened. I think there's more of a label on it nowadays. People are able to use that term a little bit more, but there is still a lot of shame attached to that.
Right.
And
right.
I really appreciate that you are, focused on sharing that story to let other people know about your story and how to move forward. So how did you move forward? How did you go from, I know that you've had some help, but what are these, like the 5 V's? What is it?
Okay. And I do want to say something else too, because I know I've had, if you read my book, you understand how there were the 19-year-old incident was not my worst incident. I actually start my book off with what I feel was the worst incident that ever happened to me. And that's being drugged and raped by somebody that I knew and I trusted. And that was I would say my rock bottom was at that point. That's why I hated to start out my story that way. But it wasn't just about getting drunk at a party and having my virginity taken away. There are, like you said, there's so many women out there that are like, oh, that happened to me. And then they laugh about it over their glass of wine. It's still a wound. So making light of it is not the best way to do it. But if that's how they're taking care of it now and it's not showing up in their life somewhere else with their husbands or whatever, that's great for them. Such a blessing. But I do feel at some point, God was hitting me in the head with the abuse that I did after, several incidences. I really was just so open and allowing these things these people to be in my life. And so when rock bottom happened, there were too many nights I spent, or days, the next day waking up on my bedroom floor crying in fetal position. There was enough of that where I couldn't do it anymore. But it's that cycle of abuse that you get used to. Mm-hmm. And then now, I have to check myself because things that start, I start seeing these signs, maybe from a man or whatever. And I'm like, that's not normal. You have to start really checking in and saying, my gut is telling me this is not normal, going down that path again. So it's never like you're done healing, right?
What are, give me a couple of examples of what's not normal. What do you sometimes?
Recently.
Okay.
Sure. I'm dating again.
All right.
And wow, going through them fast. I mean, that sounds really terrible that I'm saying that, but it's like, when you know. Yeah. Like, it's like, oh, okay. I was heading to a date about a month ago, and I'm broadcasting my, positive energy or whatever, but I still need to be aware. And got to our meetup place or whatever. And I said something that I heard this tone of voice from my date. And it was like a different tone. I hadn't heard this yet. We'd been talking on the phone for weeks. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. We had met before pre-COVID, And he said, I said something, I was like, oh, I don't know. And I never reacted like this before ever, because this is my third V, the voice. I said, oh, I don't know if I like that tone. And that's new, Vicky. That's new Victoria, to say something like that. And I was like, I don't think I like that tone. And he goes, what? Like, you're really sensitive. Do you have battered wife syndrome?
Oh, wow.
And I just went, oh, wow. Okay, I think we're done here. And I had the cutest little outfit on. And this is, how I redirect now, by the way. I went and ran an errand. I picked up something to eat. So I got an errand run that, was on my list of things to do. This was a Friday night. I looked cute. I went home, turned on music, and just started dancing and giggled the rest of the night by myself, instead of going down that path of,
well, you celebrated. You were celebrating that you made the right choice.
Right. And that other women would just be like, oh my gosh, I mean, of course you wouldn't go, whatever. But again, if you read my book in detail and you see some of the things that other people have said, I'm reading your book and going, when is she going to wake up? Right. And I'm so glad there are women that never have to go through what I went through, and never will. But there are women that are still stuck, because one witness to me, she's 50 and she's still in the cycle. So it's not me, oh, poor me, I've waited till 46 to stop this. There's other women out there that are still in that cycle, and they don't know that that is unacceptable behavior, and that they're the last man on earth. Like, and when you get older, you think that you're like, oh, I have to take this, because I'm getting older, and the selection is not so good. And so that, all of that redirecting. And so that leads me into my 5 V's, which I love your idea of prevention. But if you're stuck in any cycle of, even if your story is not abuse or sexual assault, my 5 V's is starting with victimhood, which right now, so many people, I will always identify with the vulnerable population. Always, always, always in our society, just because of what I've been through. I felt, a part of that. But there is a point where we do have to look at ourselves, like I did, and just go, okay, I'm not going to be a victim anymore. And we have to take those labels and take them off, whatever that label is, whether it's a disease diagnosis or something, you're labeled, okay, you've always been told you're not smart enough. You have to, take that label and throw it off. I say it in my book about, thought trains. Throw it off the train, get rid of it, and really practice going back to the positives and focusing on the positives. You have to retrain your brain and change your thinking. And that takes so much work to get out of victimhood. Victimhood is comfortable, and you will go through an angry phase. I went through that phase. It's important. And that was the other thing I was going to say. My spiritual directors had me balance my masculine and my feminine. And that's part of my 5 V's as well. We all have a masculine and feminine. I call it the divine masculine and feminine. It's God-given. But I was so stuck in my masculine for so long, wouldn't have put on, a pretty little, dressed up or whatever, because that was angry Vicky, because every man is going to be like this. And I had to learn to soften and, really embrace my divine feminine. And I see women needing to do that regardless of sexual assault or rape. It's just women are like, I'm going to do it all now. I don't need a man, regardless of what you've been through. So that's actually the 4th V. But back to victimhood, we have to get out of victimhood, and then into what I call the 2nd V, validation. And that is not needing that external validation. For me, it was sex. So the cycle continued because my currency was sex, and I was good at it. And I felt safe there. That's how they were going to connect with me, because that was my first experience. And I kept repeating that. That doesn't work. I found that out very quickly. Most women know that, but then we keep doing it. But having to give my own validation. And I don't need that. I am sacred. I am whole. I am deserving. Somebody is going to love me without me having to give my body away to them. And that's a hard lesson I had to learn. So then I moved into the voice of the third V, using my voice, and we all have to speak our truth. That was very tough for me. I'm a pleaser. I don't, speak up when I don't want that confrontation. I want everything to be happy. And I had to learn that I had to use my voice, and I had to establish boundaries for my relationships in all aspects of my life. It wasn't just with men. It was in my business. It was everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that was the hardest thing. Like back, one of my chapters about powerful, rich men, older men that I trained, and they would, save their money until the end of our workouts and sexually harass me with their words, never touch me, but would say the most disgusting, vile things for an hour about my physical appearance when I was in my 20s as a personal trainer. And they were all married. I mean, it was just even worse, more insulting. But I kept quiet because I needed the money. So it was in my business and it was in my personal life. And then, oozing into all aspects of my relationships. And so
so back then you were valuing the money or the sex aspect of relationships. That was the value then. What do you value now when you are interacting in your relationships?
Good question. And I pray about this every day. I want a man to see, in a relationship, let's talk with men. And I do believe that I will meet the most amazing human, that even putting this out there, because it's so taboo, that you saw my post the other day that women are like, oh, Vicki, I'm worried about you. Put that book aside, get on with your life, move to the next thing, because no man is ever going to be able to handle your story. If I would be rich if I had even a nickel for every time someone said that to me. That's how many times I've heard it. And I'm like, unacceptable. That's fear-based. That's fear-based. That's fear-based. Like, I know there is a man strong. He's going to be strong mentally and physically and everything to be able to emotionally. That's number one. But that's what I want. I want a man to get to know me for me, and want and crave to get to know me, my brain, my emotional side, my spiritual side. And I believe that is going to happen. And that is, to me, it's gotten easier because I've already done all of that. I'm not someone just coming out of divorce and going, hey, I'm just going to, sow my wild oats or whatever. I'm like, I've been there, done that, had that, I've been single for my whole life now, because I never actually got married. So I see it more as an exciting time to embrace relationship and get to actually know somebody. And if they don't want to take the time to do that, I'm like, they're gone. So I don't use the physical as my currency. And I really stopped that a long time ago. However, we have to work harder as women so that they can see, they can see other things. In business, my voice is now, with COVID, we've all had to step up in certain ways. I lost a lot of income because I can't go into houses, and something has shifted in me where, the mask, all the mask stuff. I'm like, I'm wearing a mask. You don't have to. I am. And I have clients that have a problem with that. But now I'm like, this is how I'm a professional. This is how I'm running my business. So new Vicki is different as far as relationships. I'm actually following my own advice of, the 5 V's, but also staying balanced in my masculine and feminine, and not being so open-hearted and vulnerable and all of that. That's the other thing is, even men that are too vulnerable, women are like, woo, don't need all of that. So we all have to work on that that dance between our masculine and our feminine. I don't want to be so masculine that I'm like, I don't need a man, because that's not going to attract a man into my life. You know, if you've got to make room and you've got to invite that. And that's why we have to work on that, no matter what you've been through.
Well, I think just you walking in your truth. I mean, if I was a guy, I personally, just because of the person I am, I would rather that you walk in your truth and you own it, and that I see your progression and your growth and how you've evolved. Because I would rather have a woman like that than someone who has all this baggage hidden in the closet.
Wow.
And, you know, to me, that is so much more appealing. So I hope that that is what's happening for you.
So that is amazing that you just said that. And I wish I could shout that. I'm going to take notes after this, because wow, you just so much to even talk about or write about. I know we're almost out of time, but I do have to say, I because I've done so much work, I've been told by men that I've dated, and another man too, have said, and they were great guys. I think I'm not as emotionally evolved as you are, and I'm not ready to do that. Which means, and they were in their late 40s. One was 50, and that just told me they're never. I mean, never say never, but probably not going to get there. They're comfortable where they're at. When I'm speaking to these men that even are kind of like taken aback by maybe me standing in my truth and who I am today, and I don't share my story. A lot of men don't read, so they're not reading my book. So that's the other thing, is I'm like, ladies, don't worry about me. They're not reading. I don't share my story with them, but they do see a different person in front of them. And I do see that they haven't healed their stuff. And that's what's disappointing, because like you said, we all need to be standing in our truths. So if they haven't healed their stuff, their mommy issues, their early wounds, there's been men, last year that I started seeing that had sexual trauma too, that they weren't aware of. And it started creeping up and coming out once we started dating. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And they weren't ready for it. And then that, I'm very patient, but it's like, wow. I mean, there's so much healing we all have to do. And we do have the time, I think, now to start looking at that. And it doesn't have to take as long as I did with it. So I think that's what scares some people. Some people can get to it and work on it, but it is a continual process. So, we have to work on it daily, I feel.
Yeah. But one thing I actually, I love writing those little memes, and that one of mine came to mind is excuses. Excuses. We all find, excuses to not accomplish what we want to accomplish. So all I can say is, don't allow another person's lack of direction or progress stop you from reaching the finish line.
Wow.
So that is what I wish for you. I hope that is your direction. Just keep running that race, sister. And
that's the victory.
Yeah,
you got me to my last
high five.
At the end, spiritual high five right there. Thank you.
I think it's really important, and focus on your own, and hopefully it will attract others who are like-minded, who are working on their stuff. Yeah. I, really appreciate that you have taken the time and actually put in words and in writing for other people in the world to read and to find out about how you went through your process. If you were to be able to share, are there any other points you'd like to share with us? And, what, if there was one big thing you'd like to end with, let us know, how, and then we can talk about how do we get in touch with your book series, because there's going to be a series now.
Well, yes, my next series, somebody, an author that I just admire so much, who said, I think this is your next book, is Dating During a Pandemic. So I took a 3-year hiatus from dating, and I started back dating during a pandemic. I mean, who does that? Like, that's like ridiculous, right? I mean, who does it? But
you're running your own race.
That's fine.
You're running your race.
But, I know. But I will say, what I did want to say is, this is so therapeutic for me in so many different ways, but also to say, even on my book signing, when I read a piece of my book that they tell you at your book signing, you need to read a little bit, I cried.
Are you going to read to us? Are you going to read
us?
Well,
no, I got my book here, but I will say, when you're not fully healed, we're not all fully healed, but you stepped into a different, I guess, taking another step forward in your healing process when you can tell your story and witness to others and not fall apart and cry. And I've reached something here, and this is probably why I needed this time for my book signing 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, to get more healing done, because I'm telling this, and I know it makes people uncomfortable that I'm not completely falling apart. But I used to fall apart. Every time I talk to a woman and share my story, I would just, I'm no good for this woman who is going through her trauma, right? But now I don't cry anymore. Like I can say it. It's there. The wound is healed, but I can share it and I can be strong about it and know that I've gotten to the other side. So I thank you that tonight was a huge, aha moment. I know that's your thing. I didn't even mean to say that, but you bring it out of me.
That's what I use in my business. I don't really use it on the Valence Fitness, but yes, I think all should have aha moments. Yes, go ahead.
And that's what tonight is, because I don't like feeling like I'm falling apart all the time when, you've got something to share, and it makes you feel stronger and more proud. Not that crying, I still cry about things. I mean, I watch TV and I'll cry. But as far as my history is concerned, that makes me stronger in relationship, especially with men, that it's not something I need to, get all emotional and cry about. But it is still a part of me, and it's my truth that has made me who I am today. And I think that's the most, that's the takeaway in living a victorious life, is being able to get through all those stages and, experience joy and peace and happiness, and be able to share that with others and not be so in that negative, angry space anymore. We have to get to the other side of that. And if I come across a little bit too positive, then oh well.
Yeah, sometimes I think it comes across though very authentic with you. So I wouldn't worry about that. It comes across very clear that you have had your own personal growth. You've had your experiences. I love that you are there now as a pillar of strength for other women who maybe are not yet there yet, and that are still crying. And I hope they'll be able to find some tools from your book to help them to move forward. If they wanted to, do you ever have individuals reach out to you to, just pick your brain, talk story, find out how any kind of organizations that you feel is important to join, maybe if you are a woman or a man who has been through what you've been through?
So I love that you're saying, because you've interviewed, I think, at least one person out of We Are Survivors, Wanda McKinley. And that's why, of course, I tuned into her talk, just because she was my very first, she reached out to me to do my very first interview right before my book was even published. I feel so connected to her organization, and all the women in it are they are my sisters and they're my family for sure. And they, even going to their meetings, sitting next to women already, the first meeting I went to, We Are Survivors, a woman sitting next to me, she was like, ooh, I just felt like some sort of energy, something. I mean, she's made me feel so comfortable sitting next to her. And that organization is great. I have several women now that have had experiences, one that I witnessed actually, and had to actually intervene with the police, which was kind of even cathartic for me, because I never reported anything that happened to me. I write about that in my book because I always felt I wasn't going to be believed. but I kind of had a full circle moment helping a young woman who was getting actually physically abused, but there was more to it because I gave her my book and she read it and said there was a lot she felt in common with me. I hear that a lot when people do take the time to read it. And so, doing one-on-one coaching, which is part of my health coaching, but even with metabolic typing, I go back to that, what I said in the beginning is that nutritional program. Something happens when I meet with a woman or a man, mainly a woman, because I am one. I get it. I understand it's a vibration, that it's not just about nutrition. They discover things through the process of metabolic typing, through the testing process and through my program that is helps them get a little more balanced emotionally, physically, behaviorally. Doesn't mean, please don't be scared. People, that are watching this, don't be scared by taking the test that it's going to uncover all of this. But there is something to be said that the inner work is not, nutrition is great, but you have to look at all aspects of it. Especially when I was going through weight issues, a lot of autoimmune. That's the other thing that I've been doing a lot of research on is the connection between autoimmune and trauma.
So
specifically sexual trauma.
So there's a lot of things that you're mentioning here that I think a lot of women and men can, like, all of a sudden they're like, ooh, that's me. How do they go about learning this process?
So I would start, I always say, now, with my book and the 5 V's, getting my book, and especially those that it resonates with, I've done a lot of, they've reached out one-on-one. I have a website. I'm now going by Victoria Griffith, but it's Vicky Griffith Wellness. .com. And so it kind of lays out everything as far as my one-on-one coaching, my metabolic typing, my personal training, which now I've decided I'm loving Zoom. I would like to keep most people on Zoom because then we don't have to deal with all the little mask stuff I was talking about earlier. Everybody seems a little bit happier if we stay stay online, but just the connection, I do hope to get more involved. I have a Facebook group that I know I will put this video once we have it up in, that's for women.
The name of your Facebook group that they can join?
Be Victorious Facebook group. And it's actually private because I started it when I published my book. So I was allowing women to share, anything that they wanted to share with support and privacy and kind of a sacred space. But I'm actually thinking to really start doing more of, a Zoom group with women so that we can start interacting with one another. And that is the thing that I will say, as you picked up on, I never had through the healing process until now. So again, another point to your prevention, that should have been something that, was there in the beginning. And finding that right group that you feel comfortable to share and not feel like someone is going to judge me for what I'm about to say that happened with this man or, the situation I was in, but just sheer love and support. Because I think after someone reads my book, they feel like they can tell me anything because I've heard you make me feel normal. And I'm like, okay, good. So it's real. It's real.
And I think there's another aspect to this that I just think is important. This is just my perspective, so I apologize if it's just my opinion. I think it's also important to, when individuals go through this type of situation or situations, to sometimes think outside of themselves to help prevent others from going through the same.
Wow.
So if you don't speak out, then we lose a soul, we lose a spirit out there.
Wow.
If someone speaks out, we have high spirits, we have happy people.
Wow.
So I really appreciate you sharing who you are, your story, your spirit, because you just shine. And I just want to thank you for being my guest today. And you gave all the information people need, I think, to get in touch with you, because I think it's really important. I want people to have an avenue. I want them to have a place to go. So if they can reach out to you, that would be great. I hope everyone does pick up a copy of your book. And is there anything else you'd like to share? before we end?
Well, I'm just so honored that, you know, to be able to go on your show, but also the way that you speak with people is so authentic. And even listening to your other interviews, you bring such an amazing vibration out of everybody, their spirit. I mean, I think you speak right to their souls. So it was interesting too. I had so many things that I wanted to say, but you guided them. So, wow. Thank you for that. Like, I didn't feel like I had to like memorize everything, because everything I wanted to say, you were like, wait, I have something to ask you. And I'm like, oh my God, how did she know that? Like,
yeah, well, you know,
she's intuitive.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's what the work I do is work all on emotional intelligence. So
it's all psychological. And so hopefully you get to recharge your batteries.
That's the same word I was going to use with you, because when you said that you're a loner, I'm like, oh, you're not, you're just checking out to recharge. That's all.
I love you. See, you're my people. You're my people. Because those that understand that that's been an interesting part of friendships. People that sit behind desks all day that are like, I got to go out. Well, it's hard to do now, but I've got to go do something and I have to be on. I hide from those people on the weekends. Like, I will not return phone calls to those people. And now they know.
You're already living a very energetic, giving life.
And talking all day.
But and you're giving of yourself all the time. Right. You're on. You know, so if you're on so much, you've got to turn yourself off at some point.
Exactly. And one more thing, my 5th V is about getting in the flow. And I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. So right now, when we get done, I will be done with my work until Monday. Okay? No work, right? People don't know this about me, but this is why I have no social life on the weekend, kind of on purpose sometimes. I can get in the flow, and I already know, because of this has already put me in what I write in my book about flow state. It's a positive vibration that comes in, and you start feeling like you're losing track of time, space, all of it. It's not draining, it's energizing, and it can happen through dance, through art, through gardening, not through drinking your face off like most people do on the weekend or numbing out. It's something that you tap into, and then it gains momentum. And that's when I get my best creative. Like, I'm going to work. When I say I'm not going to work, I'm not going to do programming for my clients or take any phone calls from clients. I'm going to go work on my new yoga flow.
You're going to work your passion.
Right. And that's where the 5th B's is being able to get into that flow state is so therapeutic for everybody, regardless of what you've gone through, especially for stress relieving and getting out of the sympathetic and getting into the parasympathetic side of your autonomic nervous system, where healing actually occurs. So you just brought that last V out by the end.
Well, good. I knew there was something missing, right? It was the last V. We got the last V. Well, no, it's not the last V. You're the last V. Oh.
Well, this is true.
You're victorious.
And victorious.
Yay.
I have to put up the V's. But thank you so much. And I also see Tamara here too.
Yes.
I know she's that. I mean, what a beautiful soul. And even how we connected years ago through dance, through our happy place. And that's just, I love that she was here. And then my friend Ashley, who's another dancing, a dancing soul, dancing friend. And so,
well, this is all going to be on YouTube. I just spoke to the last interview, the woman that I interviewed last, and she ran with it. She has private messaged so many people. And she said, I called her today actually. And she said, you know what? Usually when they see things that I do, they just go, oh, that's nice. They said this was a wow. And they were so impressed with her interview. They are so happy for her. So if this benefits, please run with this, utilize it for whatever you need to have people hear your story. I wish you all the best, Victoria. And I need to call it quits for today, but we're going to.
Yeah, Tamara's leaving. She said she loves us both.
Tuning in. Yes. I love you too.
And she connected us.
Yes.
So, mwah.
Okay. Thank you everyone for tuning into Valence Fitness. Look out for this episode in the next day on Manners in Momentum on YouTube. Thank you so much. Have a great day.